Welcome to our 2024 season of the Cloud Industry Forum Presents TWF show. Here we are in our mixed reality newsroom, courtesy of our friends at Disruptive Live. This is our new style podcast, where each week we'll interview a guest from our members or someone with something to say about cloud technology or transformation or what's coming next. I'm David Terrar. I'm the CEO of the Cloud Industry Forum, which is a not-for-profit trade body that champions and helps accelerate the adoption of cloud technology and services. If you want to find out more about us, we're at cloudindustryforum.org. I'm at DT on X, David_Terrar on Threads and Instagram, and I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. Today, we are speaking to a technology evangelist, but maybe we'll be coming at things from a kind of more academic angle. Certainly a very exciting viewpoint, because our guest is our good friend, Professor Sue Black OBE. And our Forbes has Sue as one of the world's top 50 women in tech, which is quite something, and we're privileged to have her on the show. We'll be covering some of her history, how she got into software engineering, how she's advised government, she's got plenty to say about the equality, diversity and inclusion topic in our space. Sue, welcome to the show. Please, can you introduce yourself, what you do, and some of the things you get involved in?
Wow. Well, hi, David. Thanks very much for inviting me on the show today. It's a pleasure to catch up with you and talk to you. So I'm Professor of Computer Science and Technology Evangelist at Durham University. And like you've been saying, I've done lots of different things through my career. My PhD's in software engineering. So I've got kind of an academic background, but also I set up a social enterprise, Tech Mums, to teach tech skills to mums, particularly in disadvantaged areas, because that's kind of the background that I came from, running programs like Tech Up Women at Durham University, retraining women into tech careers, but also other things like ran the campaign to save Bletchley Park. And well, I'm sure we're going to get into some of that now, aren't we?
We will. But first, tell me, what got you into the computing space in the first place? Because you didn't start there, did you?
No, absolutely. Well, I left school and left home at 16 and actually worked in various different jobs, like worked with refugees for a year, worked as a student nurse for a year, worked for a record company for a couple of years, then got married, had 3 children in 2.5 years. And then unfortunately, my marriage ended up breaking down and became a single parent. And it wasn't really till after that when I'd left the refuge for 6 months, and then coming out of the refuge, finding myself as a single parent, realised that, now I was the kind of like sole provider for the kids, and thought about going back to work, but realised that actually I'd be on minimum wage, so I'd be working like as an admin in an office or on the checkout at a supermarket. And realised that I couldn't actually go back to work because I wouldn't earn enough money to even pay for childcare for 3 kids. So I thought about going back into education. I hadn't wanted to leave school at 16. It's just my home circumstances had been too difficult to carry on at school. So I went along to the local college, asked if I could do Maths A-level. And luckily they had a course which was the equivalent to 2 Maths A-levels in 1 year. So I did that course, which was kind of like a Maths Access course. And then I thought, well, I can either do a maths degree or a computing degree. And actually at that time, my focus was on earning enough money. And I thought, computer science, technology, that's where the money is. So actually that's why I chose to study computing for my degree. But then actually I'm very grateful that I did a 4-year degree in computing. And then in the final year of my degree, my project supervisor said to me, what do you think about doing a PhD? So I said, I'd love to do a PhD. But what I didn't tell him was I didn't know what a PhD was. But I looked it up after the meeting and thought, I would like to do a PhD. So I applied for a position and then started a PhD in software engineering. And then several years into that, I applied for a full-time job at South Bank University, which is where I was, and got that. So I became an academic.
Fantastic.
I'll stop there, shall I? I'll go on forever.
That's it. really appreciate you sharing that history. It's fascinating to see where you've got to and where you came from. That's fantastic. Now, you mentioned Bletchley Park, and we met sometime around 2006, 2007, when we were all kind of getting to grips with social media and figuring out digital marketing. And then you masterminded that kind of brilliant campaign to help save Bletchley Park. And by the way, this is it's kind of special to me, as my auntie Wynne was one of the code machine operators there in the war. So tell us a bit about that campaign and what you did. And you wrote a book about it as well, didn't you?
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't really know much about Bletchley Park. The first time I went there was 2003, and I was invited up to a meeting by the British Computer Society because I set up the Women's Network in 1998, which was the UK's first online network for women in tech. So I went up to Bletchley Park, and on the way there, I was thinking to myself, what do I know about Bletchley Park? Like, code breaking happened there in the Second World War, and for some reason I thought it was like 50 old blokes wearing tweed jackets and kind of doing the Times crossword and a bit of code breaking on the side, sort of thing. So I didn't really know anything much about it, and then went to the meeting, and afterwards went for a walk around and walked into one of the blocks at Bletchley, and there were these guys in there who were sort of tinkering away with this amazing feat of engineering, kind of like this half-built thing. I didn't know what it was, so I went over to chat to them, and it turned out that they were rebuilding Turing's bomb machine, and had a great conversation with them about that and about the industrialization of the code breaking process. And then they asked me, why are you here? So I said, I'm representing this group of women in computing. And so they said, did you know that more than half the people that worked here were women? So I was like, I had no clue any women worked at Bletchley Park from what I'd seen. And so I said, well, how many people worked here? And they said more than 10,000. So I kind of found out that day that about 8,000 women worked at Bletchley Park and the outstations, and I was completely blown away by that. So I went away that time and raised some funds to run an oral history project to capture the memories of the women that worked at Bletchley Park. And then at the launch of that project in 2008, I found out that Bletchley Park might have to close. The director said it was teetering on a financial knife edge. So I thought, well, that's terrible. I mean, it was kind of in the back of my head. And then I got invited up to a reception at Bletchley Park and did a full tour of the site, which I'd never done before, with one of the veterans who'd worked there. And he was telling us all these amazing stories of like code-breaking achievements by people as young as 16, I think. And some of them women who'd, like cracked the codes and saved lives, and just an incredible story, like from one hut to the next block to the next hut, all of these different amazing stories. And we got to the end, and he said, and the work that was done here was said to have shortened World War II by 2 years. And at that time, 11 million people a year were dying. So potentially saved the lives of 22 million people. And I just thought, this place can't close. I've got to do something about it. So at that time, as I said earlier, I was a lecturer. And then I just applied for promotion anytime I could. And by 2008, I was head of department at the University of Westminster, which meant I was on an email list for all the heads and professors of computing in the country. So I emailed all of them, asked them to sign a petition which was on 10 Downing Street website. We wrote a letter to the Times, and I managed to get in touch with Rory Keflin-Jones and then get on BBC News, and we were front page of the BBC website. So that was July 2008, and was the beginning of a campaign, really. I didn't even really realise that I was starting one. And kind of using traditional media to start with. And at that time, I'd signed up for Twitter. I hadn't really used it very much. And it wasn't till Christmas 2008 that I really kind of realised the potential of Twitter. And I don't know if you know James Watley, Black Watley Dude, was on stage at a conference I was at. And he was like, who here's on Twitter? So I put my hand up and I said to the person sitting next to me, oh, it's rubbish, isn't it? And that person was at MadProf on Twitter. And he said, no, it's great. Like, what are you talking about? And so he showed me how to use it. And I got it on my phone, because before that, I just had it on my desktop at home, I think. And that was it. I was hooked, really. And just kind of played around with it for a couple of months. various people like at Documentally and at Sizemore on Twitter got in touch saying they wanted to help with the Bletchley Park campaign. I'd set up a blog and they'd seen my blog. And then we all went up to Bletchley Park for a visit, and they came with me to Captain Jerry Roberts, one of the code breakers that I'd become friends with, gave a talk at UCL, so they came to that. And Jamila Knowles as well, who was at the BBC at the time. And so they really helped me to see how to use social media, which was amazing because it just kind of opened my eyes to all sorts of things which I'd not really considered before. And then managed to get Stephen Fry involved in the campaign just by sending him several direct messages. And I think that was kind of like a turning point in the campaign, really. So that was February 2009. And it took another 2 years till the campaign was ended. But Twitter and social media played an absolutely massive role because it was just, for the first time, you could reach people that you didn't know just by searching on things like hashtags. You know, people would be talking all around the world about code breaking or Turing or Bletchley Park, and I could just find them and talk to them straight away and involve them in the campaign. So, yeah, exciting times.
Important stuff. It's really great. Now, let's fast forward to now. You're at Durham University as a professor there. What kind of research do you do there?
So the stuff that I care about these days in doing research is around bias, the bias in AI, bias in computing technology. So I've got several PhD students. So one, Sarah Wire, is looking at bias in large language models. So she's done some interesting stuff, taking snapshots of outputs from GPT-3, and which we have been using as ChatGPT, and looking at how biased the output is. And as we know, the data that's used for ChatGPT is, I guess, biased, a lot of it, because I think 22% of it is from Reddit, for example. A lot of it's from Wikipedia and various different sources, but I think Reddit in particular is an issue. And so what her research has highlighted has been that, it's quite misogynistic, it's quite racist, sexist, homophobic. And so what she's found with the outputs are that she's done topic clustering, so to look at the main topics that come back when she puts in very sort of generic prompts like men can, women can, and then takes 10,000 outputs from that input. And for men can, you get things like be superheroes or go drinking, or there's lots of stuff about God and alcohol, superheroes. And then for like women can, you get stuff like get married, have abortions. So it's very, very different from, in terms of the different genders and all other sorts of things besides. I've got a PhD student who's looking at security standards and bias in security standards, which is interesting. And another student who's looking at bias in the sort of tech recruitment process and how to make sure that things like gender and race don't have a negative influence on whether people get hired, particularly into technology roles.
Fascinating. Do you know, I'm ashamed to say I'm actually just halfway through that Invisible Women book and learning a lot.
Oh, it's such a good book.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah.
That leads us into the Women in Tech topic. What kind of things are you doing and the initiatives you've started and trying to change things?
Sure. Well, so, I've had a big focus on women in tech since I realised I was a woman in tech. Back in 1998, I've been going to like academic computer science conferences and trying to network and not always having a great time. Not realising that sometimes when I spoke to men at academic conferences about research, they got completely the wrong idea, which could be traumatizing at times. So that helped me to realize that I was a woman in computer science and not just a computer scientist. And so that's when I set up the BCS Women Group back in 1998, which is still going strong. So other things I've done since setting that up and running the project to do with recording the memories of the women that worked at Bletchley Park are tech mums. So it's a social enterprise to teach tech skills to mums, particularly living in disadvantaged areas, because I can just see how kind of like knowledge of technology and confidence with technology has just completely changed my life, from me and my 3 kids living in poverty to having a successful career and a successful life, I guess, really. And so kind of wanting that particularly for everybody, but in particular for women in sort of reduced circumstances. So that's Tech Mums, which is a program which teaches confidence with tech and like basic skills like app design, web design, social media, how to stay safe online, bit of programming in Python, how to set up your own business, that kind of thing. And then more recently, Tech Up Women at Durham University, working with various different partners and working with tech industry. So we applied for the first lot of funding 5 years ago now. So the program's been running for 5 years. And the whole idea is to create programs that will take women with potential, who are excited about technology, directly into a sort of tech career. So working with industry partners, we asked them what were the key job roles that they wanted to employ women into. And so, for example, the first time we ran, that was software engineer, data scientist, agile project manager, and business analyst. And so we created a program to take women from underserved communities with a degree in any subject area and a passion for technology through a 6-month, mainly online program directly into those 4 job roles. And we've been very successful. We've had 300 and something women go through the program now over 5 years, and are recruiting for our current cohort. And our current focus is we're working with Catch 22, and we are retraining women who just need to have maths and English GCSE, aged 18 to 30, into a sort of general tech role or like an IT support role. So if anyone's interested, do get in touch.
Excellent. Now, you mentioned bias and large language models in your research, that kind of thing. Obviously, last year, 2023, was the year of generative AI exploding onto the scene. How do you think AI is going to change things for the coming year?
Well, that's a tough question to answer, isn't it? I mean, it's really hard to say, isn't it? I find it almost impossible because you don't know exactly who's going to release what products, and what effect they're going to have. I mean, I think we're all much more connected now, and I think that kind of what ChatGPT has shown us is that, I mean, it was incredible how many users they got so quickly. So if there are tools that people can easily use, which have value, millions of people are going to use them very, very quickly now. And it's quite hard really to say what the effect of that is going to be. But thinking about, I mean, my focus on bias, I guess that's the thing I'm most worried about, is that if the data that you use is skewed in any way, and of course, it's all data is probably skewed, then you're probably going to negatively affect large groups of people. And because most of the people that are creating AI products and services are white middle class males, I suppose, then I think, it's up to them to think hard about diversity and inclusion, because they need to have diverse and inclusive teams that are building those products so that they've got all of that kind of expertise, understanding, cultural backgrounds, kind of coming to bear on creating products which are fit for purpose for everybody. And I think that hasn't really been seen as that important yet, but I think it's of critical importance because we've seen, already where things have gone wrong. For example, face recognition software is accurate, I think, something like 98% on white males, something like 90% on white females, but then something like 30% on black females, for example, which, it shouldn't be used if that's how, it's inaccurate it is. There's a great film, I don't know if you've seen that, called Coded Bias, which is all about these sorts of effects and how it's so important to make sure that we have diverse and inclusive teams building and testing products to make sure that they are fit for purpose for everybody. So I think, I don't really know what's going to happen, but the main thing I suppose that I worry about is all of this stuff around diversity and inclusion, because it's of critical importance now. And it worries me that big AI systems can have an impact on millions of people really quickly. And so if those products aren't fit for purpose for everybody, then some groups of people are going to be disadvantaged, and that's wrong.
I totally agree. And the other thing about the diversity and inclusion topic is that it's good for business. From my experience, the more diverse and inclusive your teams are, the organisations are, actually, the better they do.
Yeah, but I mean, it completely makes sense, right? Because if everyone's got the same kind of background, you don't see what issues might come up from like products and services that you're creating. Whereas if you've got people from all different backgrounds, different ages, different experiences, different cultures, of course they're going to come in with lots more ways to solve problems, or different ways to solve problems. So it just completely makes sense to me. I don't quite understand why it isn't actually happening. Like why aren't companies are worrying about it a bit, I'd say in general, but not enough.
Totally agree. Now, obviously, we're the Cloud Industry Forum. Do you see cloud technology as a key enabler supporting things like AI and quantum computing and the metaverse and that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what would we do without the cloud now? I was just talking to someone recently about, for example, when I was doing my PhD, and we didn't have the cloud, so I had to back up onto a floppy disk, and so I would do that every night. But then, one time the disk got corrupted, and something went wrong with the copy on my hard drive, and so I lost 3 months' work. Which is horrendous. So even just for those sorts of purposes, it's amazing having the cloud. But also, being able to collaborate with people in real time across the world. I mean, the cloud has just brought us so much. It's just incredible.
Excellent. What sort of technologies are really exciting you at the moment?
I don't think I really get excited about the technology per se. Well, actually, having said that, I'm really getting more and more into like VR and AR, and I just bought a MetaQuest 3 headset, and I can't believe how good the graphics are and the experience is now. I really love boxing workouts, and and so I'm doing that almost every day now, and I just absolutely love it. So I mean, that's very exciting for me. But I think the potential of VR, now that the headsets aren't so heavy, that the graphics are so good, that the speed of rendering everything is just amazing, really. So it can give you so much better experience than even a few years ago. So I think we're getting closer and closer to the time where we can use VR for just so many things. I'm thinking of things like healthcare, particularly like for example, like with elderly people who quite often can't get out and about, like my mum-in-law, and that can be quite lonely. So potentially, if there was a headset that she could wear and chat to her friends or her great grandchildren, I kind of think healthcare in particular, And yeah, I suppose VR and AR most excites me at the moment.
Out of all the things we've talked about in the last 20 minutes, what do you think is the most important?
Oh well, yeah, I definitely say bias in all sorts of ways, because I think, for probably the whole of human history, we've all been biased. So it's all kind of in us, and we can't always see it in ourselves. We'll probably notice it more in other people. So I think, we have to work really hard to kind of change society so that, and I think we're sort of on the way there. It's a bit of a roller coaster, and it's taking too long. I always think everything takes too long, but we need to get to a place where we appreciate difference and celebrate it rather than think that it's a negative thing. And yeah, that's what I care the most about, I suppose, in general.
Those are great words to end on, Sue. Fantastic. But before we go, if people want to get in touch with you and find out more about what you do, how do they find you?
Well, I'm sueblack@gmail.com, at Dr. Black on Twitter. I'm in X. I'm on LinkedIn. So I think I'm quite easy to find. But there is another wonderful Professor Sue Black, who's a forensic anthropologist, and we get mixed up for each other the whole time, which is quite funny. But yeah, so hopefully you'll get me rather than her.
That's been absolutely brilliant, Sue, and it's been really great for you to share all those stories with us. And really, thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's lovely to chat to you, David.
So I hope you enjoyed what Sue had to say about Bletchley Park and about her background and how she got to where she is today and some of the great initiatives that she's been involved with. And obviously there was a theme through all of that, which was to do with bias and to do with diversity and inclusion and the women in tech topic. We'll be coming back to that topic on a regular basis. Now, we want your feedback. Maybe you've got suggestions for us or you want to be a guest on the show, please can you send either put comments here or email us at info@cloudindustryforum.org. We look forward to hearing from you, and depending on how you're watching this, we'll see you next week or next time. And we'll be back next Wednesday live at 2:30.